Now, I had mentioned earlier, the last episode, we had a situation five real cases that happened. Would you believe? So a client comes in and said, "Hey, you know what? I bought this other policy and I think I paid pretty good pricing on it." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, what kind of pricing are you paying?" And in the case in that was term insurance. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand, just because you hear the word term insurance, you think it's cheap. Not always true. Let me repeat. Term insurance is not always cheap, okay? Now, it's competitive. Definitely, I can say that. But again, if you're young and you still got vibrant and you got other stuff, in all these 5 cases, they brought in a term policy for me to see. Do you believe I took that term policy payment? Let me repeat. In one case, here's what happened. They were paying $40. This person, I guess maybe about 40 years old, I'm guessing, they were paying $40 for a $50,000 term. And to them, that was kind of cheap. And I'm still thinking, that sounded high. Do you know, I came in and compared some other company term where you can get that. Listen to this. Cut the cost in half. Let me repeat. Instead of $40, this person paid $20, cut the cost in half, and in addition to that, the death benefit from $50,000 went up to $100,000, and has all living benefit. It was put on paper. And so what we did was, we of course share her, the information about, here's what you have, this thing, we cut your cost in half and we double up your insurance, and we added all the living benefit, and we added convertibility, and. Well, the interesting thing is I get a call yesterday, and the company that we were replacing told her, well, people can out there promise you the moon, and when it happens, when you die, they're not going to cover because those companies are not reputable and they're not going to be around. So therefore, don't think it is, and don't always go by the cheap prices because that's not always true. Because remember how people always tell you don't always bet, that cheaper is better. Well, so in this particular case, I went back and I said, you know what? You're right. Some of the company I gave you are very, very young. They're somewhat new, right? They've been around only 200 years old. A&M best top rated in the industry. So when people tell you otherwise, do your homework. Do your homework with the company who you're going to be doing the new business with. Are they reputable? Are they A&M best? Are they top rated in the industry, and how long they've been around? I don't know about you. If a company around 200 years, I think they've been around a long, long time, and they can pretty bet you as far as they continue on. But in this particular case, I just showed it to them. But you know what I did? I even took one step further. I said, you know what? I could offer you 20 years. If you're 40 years old, 20 years from now, you'll be 60 years old. And I'm guessing 60 years old, you can still be around. Based on because you can't predict when you're going to die, and I can't predict when you're going to die. None of us could. But if you choose to do business with me, and you understand this right now, you can never go back and yell at me. When you turn 60, if I give you that cheap, pricing for temporarily, understand that you have to die before 60 for your family to benefit. Because that's what term does. It limits the number of years you have to die within that period. I mean, people buy 10-year term. That means you have to die in 10 years. Are you kidding me? It's really sad because sometimes, some people, there were cases out there, an article where one gentleman, there was an article a long, long time ago. It's really sad. He had a term insurance that's about to run out. And you know what he did? He had a terminal case that happened to him. And rather than, waiting the time out when you pass away, he figured, well, if I die way before my actual term expire in a year, my family will have the money. And in this particular case, it's very sad. He did commit suicide just because he wanted his family to have the insurance because he knew that it was going to run out and he knew it terminal. I don't want people to have that situation that happens to them. And you don't hear these kind of stories because the news don't really talk about it, and people out in the industry don't talk about it. Terminally fit in certain condition, but it is not the one that you want to have if you're looking at to protect your family in the future. And that, let me tell you, these count as a story. So in this particular case, imagine I told my client, I said, look, I can give you this now, but understand that it's not going to give you what you need for long term. Would you believe it? The term pricing this client was paying, I took that and converted into a permanent policy with the same cost. Now, keep in mind, because they were young, that's why I was able to do that, keep it the same cost. But the fact that I said, look, I took the same one, converted it to a permanent, and you're going to have it until 120 years old. Now, if you die, you have to die before 120 years old to get paid. I don't know about you, but in that particular case, it is a safety net that the client has and that they feel really, really good that, wow, this thing can do that? I said, yeah. And during the time, if you happen to get, sick, you also cover. And if for some reason, and that was a permanent policy. And say, oh, by the way, you remember the term where you're paying this $20 or 30, $40, whatever it is? Imagine down the road, you always have cash that's building up, and the account is growing with the market. The account is still growing with the market, even with the little amount of money that you gave me. Now, I'm not going to advocate tell you that $40 is a retirement. No, it is not. Absolutely not. But at least it gave you a decency of a permanent policy that you can never outlive. In addition to that, guess what else it does? Imagine I open this little bucket for you in the future when you go to work and you make more money, where you say, you know what, I can put $100 in, I can put $200, I can put $1,000 into this account. But it's a starting point. It's a starting point somewhere where some of you guys out there, if you just take $1 a day, just $1 a day to change your family life and to change your life, to make a difference of the kind of things what it could do.